It's been one of those weeks today.
Yeah. Right. Um, yeah, man, you're a busy guy. You are constantly on podcasts and websites and answering all sorts of like questions and then writing
Yeah.
your own blog posts and writing books.
Yeah, I don't
Uh
sleep much.
like
I think
is there only one of you or is there a team of clones at work here?
just me. I wished I had a team of clones, and I have resisted, uh, because somebody said, "Do you use AI to write?" I'm like, I don't think so, because I don't think it'll ever be as good as a human. But there are days when I'm like, I'll give it a shot. Just
Ah.
if nothing else to get some knucklehead stuff off my plate. But
Yeah, I've tried pretty much all the big systems, and the problem with them that I have is that generalized knowledge they're okay with. Like, how do I center something in CSS? But then
hmm
you ask them, "Hey, can you tell me the origin of ambush bug?" Not a single one of them is able to figure it out or tell me any information because that it's just not like popular, right? So
yeah,
yeah, you
yeah.
ask about Jim Kirk, sure, you're going to get a bunch of like okay information, but you ask about his brother,
I mean,
maybe not.
just reading articles on websites that are obviously generated at least in part that way is infuriating because it's just so repetitive and basically, like a lot of the entertainment websites, all they do is rehash the same paragraph in different ways, it seems like
Hmm.
half the time. Like especially if they're speculating on something from a show. Well, this character was in this episode, which means he might come back on the other Star Trek show. And then they basically just say that 4 or 5 different ways. And I'm
Right.
just like, you're either a very bad writer so, because you don't, you're just basically writing a blog and getting hits for it on Screen Rant or whatever site. I mean, it's just I don't know. It used to be there was actual reporting done. Now it's just more like wish fulfillment. This is what I want to see on Star Trek, but I'll make it an article instead.
Yeah, the problem is that they're making money doing that.
They do. It makes
So
they wouldn't do it if it didn't make money. So
exactly, exactly. So the purpose of the call is that I run a website called StarTrekBookClub.com. You and I have interacted on various social media systems, and I think we even like exchanged an email at one point. Um, but the entire idea of the site is that it's just tracking what's going on in the written world of Star Trek.
mhm.
You're obviously going to be a big part of that. Back in 2018, 2019, I sent a message over to the shore leave people and said, "Hey, uh, what's your policy on having media people come up to your show?" And they said, "Well, we love it. We want to have you up here. Why don't you come on up?" And I said, "Well, the finances don't actually work for me right now. Why don't we wait till 2020?" And then the world melted down.
Yeah.
So this is going to be my first year actually making it to shore leave.
Oh, excellent.
Uh, I've done plenty of shows around here in Florida. I'm in Tallahassee, um, and like all the local shows like Orlando,
Mhm.
Tampa, Jacksonville. But
Pensacola. Yeah.
yeah, still haven't gotten out of state. So this is going to be my first big one.
Wow.
Um,
Oh, this will be interesting
and
for all of us because it's a new venue for us this year.
that's what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
How long have you been going to the shore leave shows?
I went to my first one in 2003. I missed a couple, through the years, but other than that, I've been going every year. There's like I think there were not counting the pandemic. The 2 years we missed for the pandemic. I think I missed 2 years because of other obligations. But
Hmm.
otherwise, I try to make it out there every year. It's one of my favorite shows to go to, so I always try to make room for it on the schedule.
Right.
And it's one of the few places where I get to see a lot of my fellow Trek novel nerds.
Hmm.
So, because a lot of them are based on the East Coast or in New York specifically, so it's going to be the largest. It's usually the largest gathering of Star Trek writers of various types is at shore leave. Uh, it's the numbers fluctuate year to year, but it usually is the same. That you see a lot of the same faces, but we've gotten some new blood in here in recent years, so that helps.
Yeah, and you mentioned that it's the first year of the new location, so there's a lot of like questions about exactly how everything's going to flow and like what the programs are actually going to be because I don't think they've released the program for the show yet.
They've given us our individual schedules, but I haven't
Okay.
seen a complete total, like every room, every hour of programming. That usually is up by now, but I think they were having some issues getting people moved around.
Right.
making sure it was allocated. Because sometimes we get a schedule, and I'd be in two places at the same time, and I'd be like, well, which one you want me on?
Well, you got to send a clone to one of those, right?
Yeah. Or opt out of one. I'll look at the panel
Right.
participants. I'll be like, you know what? They got enough old middle-aged white guys on that panel. I can recuse myself. That kind of
Right.
thing. So particularly
Yeah.
if it's
I've spoken to probably like a half dozen other authors already, so
oh
I've got
good.
an okay idea of like what it's gonna be like. But
We're pretty chill
what,
there. It's a pretty chill show. I mean, it's not like Comic Con or anything like that. It's definitely doesn't have that kind of vibe or energy to it. It's much more laid back. Um, I think it helps that it's run by a group of volunteers rather than being a corporate event.
mhm,
There's not as much press to get somewhere so they can get your money out of you as quickly as possible. There's not all that. It's one of the reasons why we all like it. So yeah, I'm curious. I mean, and I guess this hotel has a dedicated convention space, so hopefully that will help because the old Marriott did not. I mean, we
mhm,
basically just took over their meeting rooms and their main ballroom, but they didn't have a dedicated convention space that's away from the hotel, or at least
right.
segregated slightly. So I'm curious to see how it works. And I've never been to that area of the country, so I'm intrigued because it's going to get me close enough where I can go do some exploring before and after the show. I'm going to do some touristy stuff like check out Gettysburg and things like that. So
Yeah, I hear that neck of the woods is caters towards the tourist minded people.
I think the
Um,
immediate area does, but once you get away from Lancaster,
mhm.
it does. It's not quite so. I know there's a theme park like within spitting distance of the hotel, some kind of theme park. But thankfully, my kids are old enough; they don't. That's not the first thing they want to do when they go somewhere. Now they want to shop and lay by the pool. So I'm like, oh, that's easy. I can do that. So
So are you bringing your whole family with you to the show?
they're not going to the con with me. We're folding the con into a larger road trip. So we're gonna do some things on the way out, and then they're gonna dump me at the convention venue, and they're gonna go do girl things
Mm.
for 3 days and pick me up on Sunday, and then we'll continue our road trip, and do other stuff on the way home.
Having done a few road trips in my life, having time away from the people that you're on the road trip with, makes the heart grow fonder. It gives you a
It
second to
does.
breathe.
Yeah. I mean, my kids are old enough now they can drive, so it's like, okay, well, you take the wheel. I'm gonna read my book for a while.
Oh, that's actually fantastic, isn't it?
They both have driver's licenses, so I'm like, good, you're on A shift and you're on Bravo shift, and I'm going to sit in the back or on the passenger side and read my book. So we shall see.
So you just had a book come out, Pliable Truths. Fantastic. I actually finished it a couple weeks ago. I got I put the an order in with my local comic shop because they give me like a 25% discount if I
Oh,
buy it
that's
through
good.
them.
Yeah, good for you.
Right. So the problem is that the distributor that they order it through, Diamond, they're they're doing their best, but their best isn't really what the industry standard is now. So it came in like a month late. So I bought the Kindle version, and then the comic shop guy was like, "Well, I've got this book here. Do you want it, or we could send it back?" And I was like, "No, no, give me the physical one," because I'm one of those people that like wants to just like complete the entire collection and also support my local shops,
Yeah,
which
I'm the same
is,
way.
yeah, it's a struggle. But like all these boxes behind me are all Star Trek books. My project
That's
after the show is to put up shelves somewhere in here, but the unfortunate thing, well, not unfortunate, but yeah, I've got this big old fish tank next to me. It's 100 gallons. It's fantastic,
fun.
but I've got two comic goldfish in it, so they're not really like doing very much. Like they're on Twitch. That's it. Like they're making
Right,
me like 20 bucks a month. But
right.
yeah, I need that real estate to put my books.
Yeah, that
Uh,
was one of my requirements for the house we're living in now, or for the new house when we bought it, was I got to have a dedicated library space and an office space, like that's mine.
mhm,
So I basically took over the whole basement level in the house because it was made out to it had been remodeled and finished to be basically an apartment for the previous owner's mother. And so it's got an office area and an area where I can put a TV, and it's got a bathroom and all that kind of stuff. I'm like, okay, I've got plenty of room for my bookshelves now, or I can buy more bookshelves now.
right.
So that's my thing. So we've been here 10 years, and I'm definitely I'm gonna die down there, I think. And then they'll just maybe just concrete the door shut and then bury it or something. I don't know. We'll
It'll be a
see.
nice tomb to open up in a couple
That's
hundred
fine.
years.
I'll be dead.
So
It won't
what
matter.
what what kind of books are they going to find down there when they eventually open it up?
I have a lot of obviously I have a lot of Star Trek stuff, but I have a lot of comics. I have a lot of history, nonfiction. I'm a military history buff, obviously. A lot of popular fiction, a lot of old school science fiction, men's adventure, pulp fiction, detective fiction, that kind of thing. Movie stuff. I have a lot. I'm a big collector of the big coffee table books with either like storyboard art or the making of this film or
Hmm.
that kind of thing. So I have a sizable number of those, and then books on writing and uh, yeah, they're gonna have their work cut out for them when I die. So
Yeah, you mentioned the coffee table books, and I've got a whole stack of them over here because uh, the however it happened, they started showing up at the comic shop like
mhm.
one every like 2 or 3 weeks before I could read the previous one. And then I got behind, and then it just turned into this avalanche. And now I've got like six of them sitting around here that are like I'm definitely gonna read that before I die. Maybe like I don't
Yeah,
know, who knows?
I like when people tell me that they have a to be read pile beside their bed. I'm like, I have a to be read bookcase. You
Yeah,
know,
right. Like that's like half my library. It's like it's an aspirational library.
Mhm. Yes. Well, I mean, and I read somewhere where that's totally somebody came down on that's a totally valid thing to do.
Hmm.
Because books don't have a freshness date. It's like you can keep them and read them and or whatever. And so I'm like, well, good. Now I'm justified because I'm the
Right.
guy that I can't walk out of a bookstore generally without something.
Yeah, and I like the idea of just having the library too, because it's the
Mhm.
library that I'm collecting, not necessarily the individual pieces.
Right.
Uh, but that's a lot of words that no eyes have been cast upon.
Well, it's a good retirement plan for when I finally stop working, if I ever get to stop working. So, and I'm a physical book guy, so I'll take a couple with me on vacation. I don't do reading on a Kindle because I look at a computer screen all day, and that's my way of unplugging. So, in fact, yesterday I unplugged and I didn't do anything but read all afternoon. So, just for the fun of it, which is a rarity anymore.
Yeah, is that a positive problem to have? That you're too busy professionally to be able to read recreationally, or is that
Yeah.
something that
Well, it's like the stuff I used to read recreationally now becomes professional. It's like homework. So because I read a lot of the comics and the novels and the other books that get published, I get to read them in their development phase. So it's now I don't get to read them for fun. Now I get to read them with a critical eye and have to mark things up and send notes in, and then maybe 6 months later, by 6 months or however long it takes for it to be published, I'll have forgotten enough about it where I'm like, oh yeah, I'm going to buy that because that was a cool book to read. So I want a copy of that. So
now you said you're doing that professionally? Is that as a like a copy editor or a editor of one of the companies, or are you just doing freelance stuff? Or
no, I'm a consultant. I'm a publishing consultant for Paramount. So they hired me about 5 years ago to kind of help be a go-between partners like the novels and the comics and the game writers and the studio. So I read the scripts for all the shows and I mark for canon and lore and that sort of thing. And I'm one of a couple people who does that. And then my main focus is when I can identify potential opportunities for comics or books or games to take something and run with it, or at least keep them apprised of what's going on so that they don't blunder into something one of the shows is working on. So I do that. So in that capacity, I get to read all the scripts for the different comics, and I read outlines and manuscripts for the books, and they pull me in to help do things that are, if it's any kind of narrative, they usually find some way to pull me in so I can read it and give it the trek check. So it's everything from there was an escape room that they put out in Las Vegas. I helped punch up the Star Trekness of that script and help them with their puzzles. So if you ever want to go to Vegas and set the record for getting out of that escape room in a manner that will never be beaten, call me. So we'll be out of there in like we'll be out of there in like 90 seconds. So things like that. I mean, any kind of interactive exhibit, or like for example, there's going to be a gallery of exhibits with props and costumes at Comic-Con next week. So I wrote a bunch of the data cards that are going to go next to the costumes and the props describing what they are or whatever it is. So I do a lot of that kind of pickup stuff for the merchandising folks, the franchise team.
Okay, that fits into one of the things I made a note of, which was the Incredibles kits, because
Mm.
I'm curious about like what actual like narrative stuff is in those, because I've never actually seen them myself in person.
Oh, so the kits were aimed. There's a whole sub brand of this publisher, Inside Editions, called Incredibles, and they do these little eco-friendly model kits for their different IPs that they support, and some original stuff that's not linked to an IP. And so it's a little wooden model that comes basically on a laser cut piece of balsa wood or thin wood, and you punch everything out, and you can assemble a model without any kind of tape or glue. And it's a good beginner's model kit for a young kid. And so every one of them comes with a booklet of some kind. And so I've written a couple for Star Trek and a couple more for Toy Story. And so I basically wrote a companion book that describes the item. So for the ones I did for Star Trek, I did a history of the ship. So one was the original series Enterprise, and one was Next Gen, and then I did a Klingon bird of prey. And so
Hmm.
I wrote, inside the box type information, like this is what you'd read if it was in the universe. And then for Toy Story, I basically uh, walked the character through the events of the different Toy Story films, because one was Woody and the other one was Buzz Lightyear. So for those, but again, it's aimed at younger kids, and probably 8 to 10, that kind of thing. So
Okay, yeah, those
but I
were
didn't.
always they're on my my Amazon wish list to eventually get one day. My fear is though that they're going to be long gone and collector's items by the time I get to them.
You know, I know they're for sale on the Inside Editions website. I don't know if they have them still at Amazon or they list them as out of print, but I checked because they just had a sale recently, like over Father's Day, and all of those books that I did, all the books I did for them were part of the sale. So, so they should still be there, I would hope. I mean, they seem to be pretty popular. I haven't done any in a while. I think I did most of those. I did all that before the pandemic, so it's been a while.
Right. Yeah,
Do you
I
ever
always
go?
try to like look at the books that authors have done and just see like what's the unique and weird stuff that they've done,
I've
or
done
like what
some weird
stands
things.
out. Yeah.
I did those. I did those because I was working with Inside Editions on those travel guides. I did a couple of Star Trek travel guides, and then so I had my foot in the door there, and they asked me if I was interested in doing these Incredibles, and I thought, well, that seems easy enough. It's actually hard to write for that audience, and make it not patronizing or condescending. It was a lot of fun, and then somewhere along the way, I had the bright idea to pitch them the idea for what became the Kirk Fu manual, the hand to hand combat, like Jim Captain Kirk.
Right.
Uh, so they liked that, and then I did a couple more of the Incredibles for Toy Story because they thought I could handle it. And then the weirdest one I've done for them is I helped write a Jurassic World cookbook. So they brought in somebody to handle all the recipes and the preparation, and all the instructions for making the meal. And I wrote all the color text, the flavor text, about the park and the dinosaurs. And it was again written in universe, so it was all like it's real. And so I wrote about the history of the dinosaur cloning and the history of the park and the original Jurassic Park and the resort that you see in Jurassic World. So basically, the idea is you could walk into the gift shop at Jurassic World and buy this, before the dinosaurs started eating everybody, of course. So,
The third act reveal that
yeah,
no one expects.
yeah.
Yeah, the you mentioned those travel guides. I don't believe you were the only one that worked on those. There was a couple other ones,
I
or
worked
was
on.
that solely your
I did the two
trip?
Star Trek ones. They did a couple other ones in that series. They had their own umbrella title called Hidden Universe Travel Guides,
Hmm.
and so two of them were Star Trek, and then there was one based on Marvel, Guide to the Cosmos, and it was all told from the point of view of the Guardians of the Galaxy. And the other one was the Verse from Firefly and Serenity. So it's a travel guide to the planets what they call the Verse, that giant solar system with all the planets. I did not write those two. Those were both written by an author named Mark Sumerak. Uh, I think I pronounced his name correctly. I've never met him, but he's definitely a tie-in heavyweight. You see his name on a lot of stuff, particularly Marvel and related properties. And they haven't done one of those for a while. I keep getting asked by people, "You're going to do another travel guide?" I'm like, well, I think we've exhausted the planets already that have a lot of information, and even then, I still had to make up the bulk of the material that's in that book. So,
Hmm.
no, I don't know if a Romulan travel guide would sell, but if they called, I'd take a shot at it.
Well, I mean, technically, they don't have a homeworld anymore to
Depends on which
travel
timeline you
to.
want to go to, that multiverse things. Yeah, because that came up, that Vulcan. I thought Vulcan was destroyed. I'm like, wrong timeline. You gotta pay
Right,
attention.
right. Now you
Yeah,
mentioned Marvel. I saw that you were just talking about a history of Captain America, I believe, right?
yeah.
That you wrote one of those.
Kevin and I, my writing partner Kevin Dillmore and I did a couple of those. We did one for Iron Man that came out last fall, and we did another one for Captain America, which just came out at the end of June. And it's basically our versions are long form interviews with the characters from the comics version, not the movies. And it's basically a breakdown of we took our inspiration from a series of books called The Last Interview, which is basically they interview a high profile individual from politics or entertainment or some other field, that's a notable field, and it's basically later in their life, twilight of their life and career, and they get a chance to look back at everything they've done. So that was our point of departure when we pitched. They came to us asking us to write a book about Marvel characters, and they said we didn't want a novel, and we don't want an adaptation or an episode guide of all their adventures. We want something more interesting than that. What have you got? And so we kicked it around for a little while and came up with this idea, and they really seemed to like it. And the Iron Man book was very well received by Marvel, and so they asked us to do a Captain America book. And at the same time, they had hired another author named Maurice Broaddus to do one based on Black Panther.
Hmm.
And then we managed to convince them that Kelly Fitzpatrick would be great for doing Captain Marvel. So she's writing the one that will come out next spring. So, and I don't know if we're going to be doing any more. We have pitched them other ones that we would love to do. They just haven't gotten back to us yet.
Yeah, that seems like a interesting angle to come at it.
It was fun. I mean, because you get to kind of get in the head of the character, and
Hmm.
and you basically, so Kevin and I played the role of the narrator, who we don't name in the books, and then we just we pitch the questions and we frame them in such a way that it lets the character kind of answer it in depth, and then we might prompt them with follow-up questions. And it's just all, the idea is that you kind of get into their head and how they view the big events that have shaped their life. So like what's Tony Stark's take on the Civil War, or the end of the Marvel universe, that kind of thing,
Right.
or the Secret Wars, which he wasn't a part of. In fact, we kind of make that into a joke. He's like, you have to ask Cap, I wasn't there. uh, but and the fun part about working with Marvel, the challenging part is, because they basically have what they call a sliding time scale. If you read comics, you're aware of this, right? So all the major events in a Marvel character's history have all occurred within a window of about 15 years. No matter how long the character's been in comics, they've got this window of 15 years where all the major events have taken place. And so boiling all of that down, like in case of Captain America, we're talking about nearly 80 years of comics, and for Iron Man it was 60 years of comics, but yet all the big events happened within 15 real years. So how do you make it all relevant? How do you make it all fit? How do you smooth over the rough edges as far as references to modern day events or day things that were modern back then? And so it was a lot of tap dancing to get it all to fit. They kept coming back to us like, Shield stood for this back in this issue. I'm like, right, but not anymore. Now it's like now it's this, and this is because this is y'all's timeline. We're just playing in your sandbox by your rules. So it was a lot of fun trying to reconcile all of that. It was a real deep dive because it's been a long time since I read that many Iron Man comics. Uh, for
And
that
did
one,
you consume those physically, or was that something that you got the digital versions?
they gave us access to Marvel.com, the Marvel Unlimited, so that we could get in there and. But the thing is, it's a great resource if you want to read comics.
Hmm.
That Marvel Unlimited. It's if you are a Marvel Comics fan and you want to read everything Marvel has ever pushed out, it's worth the subscription fee. If you are trying to research anything and find it in the pages of a Marvel comic, it is the worst website ever because all it is basically non-searchable PDFs, and so
Ooh.
you can't search for keywords. You can't search for it's just insane.
Yeah, the when I saw that you guys were doing those Marvel books, I feel like Iron Man and Captain America, that like conceivably it's easier to do something like this with them because like their origins are born out of conflict, right? Like it's
Mhm.
out of like these big wars, they have these big things that happen to them. And then I was reading that Kelly Fitzpatrick's doing hers with Captain Marvel, and
Mhm.
that character I don't know well enough
Right.
to think that of, other than like the True Believers issues of like her first appearances and her first big battles. And I'm
Yeah, I
like,
don't.
this is not the character that eventually ended up being on screen or in comic books.
Yeah, I don't know the character well at all. But I was thrilled when they hired Kelly to do it. I think she'll, from what I've seen some snippets of it because she shared it with me when she was working through some issues. I think it's going to be a banger. So it might end up being the best of the bunch. I don't know.
Yeah,
She's
definitely look
quite a
forward to
writer.
seeing how it is received and how it actually looks.
It's
Do you
neat
know
to have.
who's
Go ahead.
publishing that?
Yeah, it's been Bella Books. They're
Bella,
based
right?
out of New York, and they have a excuse me, they have a an imprint called Smart Pop, which is where their pop culture titles reside. In fact, we were recruited by a friend of ours who's a writer and an editor named Rob Perlman, and he approached me a couple years ago and asked me if I was interested in taking this on. I said, well, it sounds great, and so I convinced him that it would work better if I was to pull Kevin in and we could work on it together because Kevin's much stronger in comics history than I am.
Hmm.
He has much greater facility for recall and that kind of thing, and understands the interwoven storylines that have evolved over the years better than I do. So I was happy to defer, on a lot of he pointed me in the right direction when we were doing all our research. Um, it was a lot of fun though. I mean, I was familiar with some of the more recent big events, like Civil War and the Secret Wars and the modern Secret Wars, not the one from the 80s.
Hmm.
So I had to basically go back to school because I remember like, well, yeah, I read Secret War back in the 80s, but I haven't read it since. I remember there was toys and stuff, so it hit at a time when I was not reading as many comics because I graduated high school, I went in the military, and I didn't get a chance to really read a lot of those things until I settled somewhere. And then I realized, hey, comic stores are actually a thing. I didn't even know comic stores existed until I was like 20. I
Wow.
had no idea. I always bought my comics at like the spinner rack at the department store. I never had a clue that there were actual comic stores, stores devoted to comics and games. So I had an eye-opening experience in California during my first tour out there.
Yeah. Now, something you may or may not have known is that military bases were selling versions of comics that were specific just to the military ecosystem, um,
I had a few,
because
yeah.
they were putting advertisements in them for like
Hmm.
Mark Jewelers that uh, we just had a comic show here in town, and my big purchase from that one was one. It was a big, my actual big purchase was a huge bin of just like probably 100 different Star Trek books because the guy was like, well, I just want to get rid of them, so just take them. We'll make a deal. But like financially, the biggest one was a copy of Care Bears. Like I can't remember what number it is, but it was one of those that it's like a kid's book that came out in the '80s, and now everyone wants because it's part of a series of like the Marvel 20th anniversary or 25th anniversary
Right.
that has a frame of the characters all the way around it. So we were talking down there, and he also had a Mark Jeweler variant that he was one, like five hundred
Hmm.
dollars for, which is a little out of my price range. But
I'll have
yeah, those
to.
Mark Jewelers are crazy.
When I was stationed overseas, I bought the comics that I did buy. I bought them there at the Stars and Stripes at bookstores.
Hmm.
Uh, so I bought the Star Trek comics that were coming out there at that time and a couple of others that grabbed my attention. I'll have to go back and look because now that I have the PDF collection of all the older Star Trek comics, it's like I'll be curious to see if the ads are different in the version I have versus what they scanned. So,
Yeah, the Mark Jeweler ones are easy to check out because it's a high gloss paper
mm,
in that like newspaper, like the comic book paper that they
right,
used to
right.
have back then. Right. So
I'll
like you can
check it
usually
out.
just tell from looking on the top that it's got like a white high gloss piece of paper in there.
I'll
So
have to check
there
it
it
out. It's
is. It
been
could be
forever.
your
It's
kid's
been in a
college
box.
fund
As I
right
said,
there.
those comics have been in a box, basically for years, and I haven't had a reason to pull them out. And then once I got the PDF, I'm like, well, I don't need to pull those out of the box to read them. I can just scan through here if I'm looking for something, if I
Right.
want to make a reference to it or something. But I haven't actually read those in ages, so it'll form my tomb when I finally kick off.
Yeah, well, it'll be well insulated. So to bring it back to the subject of the actual reason I'm talking to you, um, you're going to be at shore leave this year, right? You're going
Yes.
to it. Okay, so what's the one suggestion that you would have for someone that's going to one of these shows for the first time?
That's a good question. Well, like I said, it's not like Comic Con or the big Vegas Star Trek con. It doesn't have that kind of energy. I mean, it's got its own energy that's good. I mean, there's going to be, a few thousand people there, but it's not like, tens of thousands of people trying to push their way into the same space.
Hmm.
It doesn't have the mentality like you're all cattle being herded from Q&A to photo op to autograph line to merch. There's a lot of programming. A lot of the stuff is generated by people who attend the show, not just staff or volunteers or people like me. I mean, like actual people who've been going to the show for 40 years participate in the programming track, and they have science programming, art programming, music programming. It's not just Star Trek; it's a different genre films and TV. Uh,
Yeah, I just saw that the Hubble team is going to be there,
Hubble team will
which
be there. They're all great.
yeah,
Yep. And so they've been doing science tracks there for I don't know 10 years now. And so a couple of the folks are always they're always there, but then they manage to bring in people that are new every year. I think I want to say they've got close to a dozen different science folks there this year, at least 10 from what I saw on the website. I did a quick look before earlier today. And I don't know all of them. I know two of them very well, and I know a few others casually, and there's other ones that I've never met. So I'm excited to see what they bring to the table. As with any con, I caution people, pace yourself. It's a long day. Programming starts at 9 o'clock in the morning and can go till midnight. So don't think you got to see everything. Just pick the stuff that you like and pace yourself. Eat right. What is it? What's the 5 hours of sleep minimum? 2 meals a day, one shower. you know, Maybe 6 hours. We'll go 6 hours now. I'm getting older. So 6 hours a day, 2 meals, and at least one shower.
yeah,
So
gotta get the beauty sleep.
yeah, got to get your beauty sleep. Bring your money. There's going to be a lot of cool vendors, a lot of handmade stuff, a lot of handcrafted things, as well as I like the vendors room at Shore Leave because there's a lot of older stuff and collectible stuff that folks our age might look for.
Hmm.
Instead of it's just being the same stuff that you can find at the store.
Right.
Uh, you know, I'm sure there'll be Funko Pops there, whatever those Funko Pops, but they don't take over like you see at big corporate shows. Looks like an entire vendor booth of them or whatever.
Yeah, those Funko Pops, I swore, like when I first saw them, I was like, look, those things are gonna be dangerous. I don't want to have any. I'm not gonna buy any. I'm not gonna collect any. And yet I've somehow got about 30 of them throughout my house.
Yeah,
Because you buy, a lot
buy
of stuff
one.
off of Goodwill, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So like they're just all over the place now. And now I've got a collection at my office where I've got like lower decks Funkos, and I'm like, thanks guys. Thanks for showing up.
I've got like a dozen of them. I think maybe a dozen if that, but they're all ones that make me laugh for some reason. Like I've got one of the
Right.
Big Lebowski, and I've got him standing next to Thor from Endgame. That kind of thing for some reason. Jason Voorhees, that kind of thing. There's at least one Batman down there because I'm a big Batman freak.
Hmm.
But I've tried to keep it under control because it can get out of control very easily just walking around, and I'm like, okay, that one's funny, but it's also expensive, so I'm going to keep pretending I didn't see it.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
mean, I
the two that I have at work are from Lower Decks because Badgie looks good as a Funko Pop.
yeah.
And then here at the house, with all my Marvel movies that I have up on the wall, I have all the Stan Lee ones that I've been able to
Mm.
find. And they look good and they look like they go with the everything there. But like I have some friends that just have wall of just Funko, and I'm like,
That's insane.
that's someone's retirement that you just paid for. Nice yacht for a Funko executive.
I've been at shows where Funko basically has pre-orders, like con exclusives or stuff that's going to debut at that show.
Hmm.
And I guess you order it all online, you pay for it online, and you get your receipt and you show up at their booth, to get your stuff. And they're done within the first 2 hours of the show for the day because the walls are stacked floor to ceiling inside their booth space with all the Funkos, and then people come and get their stuff, and then it's empty and they're done for the day. They don't sell anything else. They
Hmm.
don't have anything for casual passersby. That's the main Funko people. Now, granted, there are dozens of vendors at these bigger shows that have, hundreds of these things, thousands of these things. And so it's getting almost to be a joke because you see them set up their vendor space and it's basically three walls of Funko from floor to 9 feet tall. And I'm
Yeah.
just like, and they're all wrapped, and everything's already on a roller, and it's all wrapped, and they unwrap the rollers and they lock the wheels and they form their little perimeter, and then they roll them out again on Sunday because they've sold maybe 7 of them.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't understand how you can do that, but whatever. To each
I mean,
their own. I'm not. I'm
yeah, if they're making money, if they're making it work, then go with God.
go. Who am I to judge, right?
Yeah. All right. So you gave me my takeaway for the show. So I will be seeing you then in
Yeah.
just a couple weeks.
Yeah. The big one that I like about this show is that all the authors do a mass signing event on Friday night, from 10 to midnight. And they're the main, they put us in an area and they got tables for everybody. And we all just sit there. And of course, that's also a prime place for a lot of us to catch up with each other, be in between
Mhm.
signings. There's a seller that's going to be on campus all weekend selling a large selection of books, but they've also got varying numbers of titles from all of our backlists. So like the 2 Marvel books that I wrote with Kevin, my latest next gen novel, and a science fiction anthology that I contributed a story to, are going to be there for me. And then, but everybody else will have something like that. So if you're lacking something or need something to get signed, you'll be able to do that.
Well, I'm traveling from Florida, so
Yeah,
the struggle for me is going to be: do I bring what I have, or do I just buy what I want to have, like signed or like
you can do either one. We don't care.
right?
They're
I,
gonna do enough business, and then we all take turns usually out throughout the weekend. If we have an hour to spare, we usually set up shop at the bookseller's booth and sign books for people who want to walk up and find us there. So
yeah, that's pretty cool.
they'll have a schedule on the wall, and people can figure out who's going to be there on what day. So,
Well, I might see you there then.
yeah,
All
and
right.
there's the
Well,
bar. We'll be in the bar on Friday and Saturday night, almost assuredly. New,
right.
new
That's what I
hub.
keep hearing from everyone, that there's going to be some drinks and that you guys are going to pick out the corner of the bar,
We
and
usually
it's
stake
just
out a
going to be
corner and
yours.
shut it down. We usually shut the bar down. We don't get too rowdy, but we do get. I mean, that's like the end of the day. We all get to put our get our hair down and kind of catch up, with everybody because we haven't seen each other since the last show. A lot of us.
Hmm.
But yeah, we'll stake our claim in the corner of the bar. I don't know how they'll treat us, but they've been warned. Like I'm sure the con committee has said these guys like to do this, and they don't break anything, and they don't cause fights. So maybe hook them up. So new show, new bar, new hotel. We're gonna break it in.
All right. Well, I will be seeing you in just a couple weeks then, sir.
All right, sir. Thanks very much for your time.
Absolutely. Thanks for talking to me. Have a great
You bet.
evening.
We'll see you next week.
Yes, sir.
All righty. Take care.